Hello, everyone, and we are back with Super Saturday Nostalgia. I am the Athletic Geek, and I am joined once again by Isaac Lee, File H Studios. And we are here to cover it's the third episode, but it's really the second kind of story here with us with X-Men the Animated Series, or the Fox Kids X-Men. Enter Magneto, and this is a pretty significant episode. I'd say maybe the most important one of the first season.
I feel like this is like where it really starts to take off for the series.
The previous episode established the prejudice, but this is what establishes the main villain, his motives, and what X-Men really is all about. So
yeah,
pretty excited to cover this one today, and we're not going to waste any more time. Let's get to it. All right, if you would like to follow Isaac and myself on this X-Men adventure, go ahead and queue up your DVD or your streaming service, find the episode Enter Magneto, and press play now. So, the thing with the Marvel TV shows that I always notice is, like, it didn't matter, like, how, if you're starting a new story arc or not, it would always do it previously, which I guess is good.
The way that a lot of their storylines, I think especially with the Fox Kids cartoons,
right?
There was a lot of you really needed that.
They were really long story arcs. I remember it was. I remember whenever I was a child, the thing that I hated the most was to be continued, because I'd always be like, well, if I miss it, I'm screwed, or I didn't know what screwed meant then. But like, so much so whenever, like, comic books were still at Walmart, if they were gonna buy me a comic book, I would have to go to the back of every one of them to make sure I was getting one with at least an ending to it. And here you have this glorious music starting to play. But yeah, it's something that, upon becoming an adult, even though I can, because I go to weekly comic shop trips, and there's DVR and streaming services to where, I can appreciate the long story being told, I look back on shows like X-Men the Animated Series and Spider-Man, and I'm wonder to myself, why the hell did I like them as a kid? Because they were always to be, I think even said that about X-Men, like, I don't like X-Men as much because it's always to be continued, but, like, even with Spider-Man, like, everything is, like, a large story, and be like, oh, what the hell, how did I love this show as a kid? Because I would always be so frustrated with that.
I think I could answer that question. These cartoons there's so much happening in every episode.
Right.
There's very little in between episodes where it's one story completes itself, or they put out an episode where it kind of lets the dust settle down from the last event to start up the next one. With X-Men and Spider-Man, that didn't really happen a whole lot.
Now, the ones where it did, I think for the most part, were good. Like, I know in, like, season 1 of Spider-Man, they kind of they have a few long story arcs, but they just more or less introduce characters. And we'll be covering this one on a future date. The Juggernaut episode, that's a standalone.
Yeah.
If X-Men, I thought it was still a really good episode. They're both of the ones that the Juggernaut was in. I believe they were both standalone. That's something where I understand, at least in today's world of comics, you want long story arcs because you can combine them all and sell a trade paperback with it. But I don't know, whenever I get my pull list every week, when I get a standalone and it's just one nice little story, it's kind of if it's good, it's refreshing to me, because it's just, hey, there's Batman just had a standalone fight with the Riddler this month, or the X-Men just kind of went off and did something cool this month, and then they're back at it, with a long story arc the next issue.
Yeah. Sometimes I kind of wish comics would go back to that. Mainly because instead of just like, there's got to be some fun stories that they can just throw out there from time to time that can be really good, and 30 pages could be enough,
right?
Or even two-parters, like some of my favorite stories from comics are two-part series.
Magneto is trying to free Beast from his prison cell, but Beast, being the nice law-abiding guy he is, he does not accept Magneto's help, which I think that's we'll get back to our original point, not to cut you off, but this does a good job in showing Magneto's motives, that they're still caring in him just for his fellow mutants, and everybody else can, he's literally ready to kill them because he doesn't care. But it also shows like what a good soul Hank McCoy is, because he could go back, he could go be with his family, he could, they have the technology to hide him, but he's not about that. So.
Really, this scene is basically showing the viewpoints from Professor X and Magneto,
through Beast.
Yeah, Beast is standing in for Professor X in this particular scene, but that's ultimately what's being laid down here. Here's Magneto, here's where he stands. I mean, he's just such a different kind of villain compared to a lot of other villains in comics.
And I still believe he is a villain. I know, like, in this day and age in comics, they try to portray him as, he still has the same viewpoints, but he's not a villain because, he's justifiable in his actions, and that's a whole nother can of worms for not my website. But, I still feel that anybody who wants to whether they have a noble goal in mind or not, if they're wanting to, commit mass genocide over anybody, I don't really feel they're a good person. You may be able to relate to that person, but that doesn't necessarily make them good.
Right.
No, I'm not saying that makes him a bad character or that he shouldn't be that way. I'm just saying that maybe I preferred more the 90s Magneto and the 60s, 70s, 80s, the previous incarnations until now, where he's like kind of portrayed as, he's one of the X-Men, but he's the extremist X-Man. It's like, no. Magneto should never be an X-Man. Okay? His whole philosophy flies in the face of what the X-Men believe in, or they're supposed to believe in.
Right. And really,
I mean, there's still the mutual respect and friendship between Charles and Eric, but they're not going to be fighting for the same team because they just don't believe the same.
Yeah. The last couple of X-Men stories I read were, I know these are from a while back, but the Avengers versus X-Men, and
yeah. That was actually a really good story.
An X-Men Schism. See, I really thought the way that they brought all of the mutants together, it's like it's not the X-Men anymore. It's like it's all the mutants are the X-Men, and there's not really, the stories I like the most from the X-Men are the ones where the ideologies clash. And
right.
Now that it doesn't really have that, it kind of has more of a... Well, Schism had it.
Right.
Even at the very end when they're picking sides.
Well, Schism, it was pretty much, you on Team Cyclops or Team Wolverine, yeah.
So it went from Professor X and Magneto to...
Again, not to cut off on this, because this is great stuff, but I really like this scene of, explaining why Magneto is the way he is.
Yeah, they're making him the relatable villain.
Yeah.
Which for an arch nemesis, that I think that's great.
Sometimes it's good to have a relatable villain. I just feel like, and you can read this on my DCCW, universe blogs when I review the episodes. I feel like that trope is way too fucking played out in this day and age.
I agree, but
because every villain has to be relatable.
Is one of those guys that
he's
it makes
he's
sense
kind of the
him.
OG when it comes to that.
Yes.
But on the
like
flip,
Doctor Doom shouldn't be.
No,
I mean, one of my favorite stories of Doctor Doom is technically an origin story, but it's not that it makes him relatable. It just makes it explains his drive. But like I mean, there's tons of villains out there that don't need to be relatable at all.
Like, everybody relates to Poison Ivy. I know. I think she's a person that she's a person that if you don't feel about the same way about saving plant life, is if that's not as important to you as it is to her, then you deserve to die. I mean, that's
what
just
more do you need?
Yeah, like she doesn't really she doesn't need to be relatable. You could be kind of one of those, like, she should be an example of kind of like, hey, don't be her. You know what I mean? Like, if something like that's important to you, like if
well, to me, I always just thought that it was like how most of these villains get started. It's just
right.
Somebody came up with a clever avenue to create a problem for the hero,
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm kind of surprised that people continue to drag her along on these stories, which I don't read them, so I can't honestly say that I know, to have a well-developed opinion about it. But it just what's happening in that corner comics, I don't care about anyway. But the fact of the matter is I'm just surprised that they keep using that character for stuff. They're finding, which I guess from a creative writing point of view,
if you got an idea, why not?
Right.
I got a really cool court scene with Beast here, where obviously it's a biased court. The judge was impatient with him. This is. These aspects of the show, these aspects do age well, whether or not the voice acting and the animation and things like that, maybe they didn't age too well, but the stories...
I love this animation. Like, compared to what cartoons are now, like, I mean, even the superhero cartoons, like, I go back to this. I absolutely love it.
Now, I prefer... This is the one... I like the style because of this nostalgia. Because I'm just, when it comes to the X-Men, I like that gritty '90s X-Men. Like, to me, that is the X-Men.
Yeah.
But later on they had the Wolverine, the X-Men cartoon. I really enjoyed the updated crispness, if that's a word, of that episode that series. And I thought, like, maybe the stories, my opinion, weren't as good as the original. But I thought, like, if you're going to do an updated X-Men... Hey, Sabretooth! If you're going to do an updated X-Men, like, that was a good way of doing it. But I just have the
first episode where he shows up in here.
He had the cameo in the first... literally in the first episode, right as the episode ended.
I forgot all about that.
But that's about it. But, Sabretooth's just apparently coming in to throw shit, because that's what he did in the first episode. He just shows up and throws some shit, and he's done with it. And
well, I mean, what else is he going to do?
Right. Kind of teasing the tension between Cyclops and Logan there. That's another thing that I liked about the X-Men is, you had differences of philosophies within the team, which, at least it was the first time that I ever read that, for me. Now, I haven't read a whole heck of a lot of the Lee and Kirby Fantastic Four run, but from what I've been told, that there's a lot of that in that series before the X-Men even came along, and that stuff didn't even really start within the X-Men until Claremont took over, but that's besides the point. The point is, this was the first time I'd ever seen superheroes not just putting their hands on their hips and going, nice job, you, good job, way to save the day there.
Yeah, well, with the Fantastic Four, I thought it was just, they were the first kind of team in comics that, it wasn't so much ideology, but like their character flaws as a team, like, worked against each other at times, and then it was one of those sort of things. And then X-Men comes along, and when Claremont took over writing, he really upped the, like,
Wolverine wanted to really kill Sabretooth now.
Yeah.
I do not. Again, another reason why maybe I kind of really enjoyed the Wolverine and the X-Men series. I'm not going to say over this one, because this is one of my favorites, but I just felt like the voice cast was so much better. I feel like
I haven't watched it, so I don't know. The animation just is off-putting to me, so I can't get past it.
I just like the. It feels like they were actually. It's not. I'm not going to say that they didn't try, in this day and age, because I'm sure they try to find good actors, but
well, I mean,
from
Marvel wasn't known by Disney at that time either.
It wasn't when that series came out either.
Oh, it wasn't?
I don't believe. I think it was right before. I might be mistaken. There might be somebody in the comments section tell me I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, it was right before Disney acquired Marvel. But what I've at least been led to understand through like going to conventions, going to like voice actor panels, and things of that nature is now they try to pick and choose the actors more. It's a lot more like a real audition instead of just like, all right, sound. We have 4 guys that can sound gruff. You're the best out of the 4 guys that sound gruff. Congratulations, you're Wolverine.
Yeah.
They look for people to play cartoons like serious acting.
Well,
which maybe they did. Now I know they did in Batman the animated series, but maybe that philosophy just wasn't at this studio yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that because we're watching this cartoon series, but like in the special features for the DC animated series, the same lady is the director for all voice casting. And that's because in one of those featurettes, she explains that her job as the casting person is to find the ones that have voices that don't conflict. They're subtly different enough, but not too different at times, depending on the character. There's all these other factors, and at this time, it was just kind of like it's almost like at this time there's
we got actors that can do the job. Let's get this show out so we can get the show out.
Yeah, like here's people who are working in the industry. Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I noticed, like, they took it really seriously in Batman. I noticed they finally started, I shouldn't say finally, but in the Spider-Man cartoon series, like, you got a few more bigger name actors, and by bigger name is just a little bit more respected, have them more respected for their craft. Like, I think George Takei, was in the Doctor Strange episode. Ed Asner played J. Jonah Jameson, so you had people that had a credibility for being on.
In this case, X-Men came Spider-Man, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
It was started in early 90s, and then I believe it was 94 when Spider-Man started.
Really? That late? I thought they were both earlier.
I was in school, at least, so I was 94, so guess my age off that, folks. But, maybe that was kind of when they decided to. I mean, you already had the set in stone cast of X-Men. Probably didn't need to have the huge overhaul. And it's not. I feel like I'm shitting on the cast when I don't mean to. It's just kind of, maybe. As good as this show was, and as good as some of the actors were, if they took maybe the voice casting as seriously as they were over at Warner Brothers at the time. Maybe just imagine the next level that this show could have been at. It's already so great. It's just kind of like it could have been that much greater, Well,
I mean, which parts? I mean, because there are parts that are like over the top. Like one of the things that I never could figure out was why everybody liked Wolverine. Because
he was just so.
I didn't become a Wolverine fan until the movies started coming out.
Right.
And because until I started seeing, because I didn't start off in comics. I started off in movies first. And when I started seeing the movies, he was 3-dimensional in the movies, but in the comics, everything, or the cartoon, and even in the comics when I started reading, it showed him as so 2-dimensional.
Well, for me in kindergarten, though, I was just like, he's tough and he's,
Right, I mean...
that's why I liked him, and then, that's enough to sustain a child, but then as I grew up, and then I read comic books off and on my whole life. I just read them just to be reading them from, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. But the time, it was about 6th, 7th grade when I actually started reading comics and kind of being able to see, not perfectly, I'd still, but at least be able to kind of see, layers of characters and different things. And then by that time, I was able to read other Wolverine stories that portrayed him and having more layers. The movie came out, so that's kind of where my love of Wolverine kind of came from. Is he started out just as a kid, and I'm like, hey, he's tough and he's cool, and then it turns into when I grew up, like, the character grew up with me, I feel like. Kind of similar to how I feel about Dick Grayson, you know?
Yeah.
He starts out being, you know, the guy, because you relate to him, he goes on adventures with Batman, but then, you know, as you grow up, you see him become his own hero, so you grow with him, but we're really tangenting off, because this is a great episode, but we're just talking about everything else but the episode, unfortunately, but...
I don't know. Well, that's the thing about doing these talks.
Oh, yeah,
it all
that's the
ties
point.
Together so well.
Right.
You know, I mean, we're watching a Marvel cartoon right now, but look at how well it just goes to show you how Marvel and DC have had such a interconnected, you know, because they shared so many writers, they shared so many artists, you know, and
Storm's looking like getting her badass moment right now. That's probably, you know, Storm and Rogue are probably two of my favorite X-Men characters, and I really feel like there's more to Storm than what people know her for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the shows, still to this day, unless you're reading the comics, you really don't get an appreciation for her either. I mean, obviously the movies haven't done her the justice she deserves. The comics, or this TV show comes close.
Right.
But still yet, you know, I mean, if they could have thrown in the Black Panther and had all of that comes with it, you know. Like,
was that going on at this time in the early 90s or no?
Maybe not. Okay, so that's a good question. I don't remember, but...
Right. But what's funny, like, and I enjoyed the T'Challa... Storm relationship, but whenever they ended up splitting up in Avengers vs. X-Men, whenever, like, Storm had her relationship with Wolverine, I thought that was cool. A lot of people didn't like that, but I thought that was... I really enjoyed the Storm and Wolverine relationship, and, well, that's the end of the episode. You know, kind of established a little bit of Magneto. Like, upon watching this again, like, it was a good base. I mean, like, even though we were off on about a billion other tangents during this episode, it established a good base for the character, but I can honestly tell you that maybe looking after this with this clear set of eyes, maybe it wasn't the best episode of the series as I kind of thought it was, but still, it's sometimes best and most important don't always coincide, but yeah, that was the introduction of Magneto into the X-Men Fox Kids series, and, you know, as I stated previously, being able to look at this now, maybe it wasn't the best X-Men episode of the series, but there is no series without that episode.
No.
And that is it for this week, and... You know, for all of you that really wanted to hear some in-depth insight into Magneto and and the X-Men, we apologize, but we still hope you enjoyed this episode. You can, if you did enjoy the episode, please like, share, and subscribe for content not just about comic books, but from gaming, anime, and pro wrestling. And if you'd like to read and see more content, please like the Facebook page at facebook.com/athleticgeek89. Isaac, any plugs?
Nah.
Yeah, Isaac may not want to plug it, but go check out his artwork on his page at facebook.com/ILH Studios. But that has been Super Saturday Nostalgia. We will be back next time with an episode of Spider-Man. So, have a good one. See you next time.